In October 1929, a man stood outside a New York bank holding his life savings in a paper passbook. 2 days earlier, he was rich. 2 days later, that passbook was worth nothing. Within 4 years, 13 million Americans would lose their jobs. Banks would collapse by the thousands. Families would burn furniture just to stay warm. And children would stand in bread lines that stretched for city blocks. This wasn't a war. This wasn't a natural disaster. This was the stock market and the entire world economy collapsing in on itself. This is the story of the Great Depression. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how it happened, why almost nobody saw it coming, and why economists still study it today to stop it from happening again. Stick around till the end, because the way it finally ended is stranger and more controversial than most people realize. Before we get into it, if you're new here, hit subscribe, because we cover finance from every angle, from history to investing to what's happening in the markets right now. And if you're finding this one interesting so far, drop a like right now. It genuinely helps this video reach more people. Alright, let's go back to where it all started. To understand the crash, you have to understand what came before it. The Roaring Twenties. America in the 1920s felt unstoppable. World War I was over. Factories that once built weapons were now building cars, radios, and refrigerators. Wages were rising. Cities were glowing with electric light for the first time. And for the first time in history, ordinary people, teachers, shopkeepers, taxi drivers, started buying stocks. Not because they understood the stock market, because everyone around them was getting rich doing it. By 1929, an estimated 1 in 10 American households owned stock. And most of them weren't buying with their own money. They were buying on margin, borrowing up to 90% of the purchase price from their broker, betting that stock prices would keep climbing forever. It felt like free money. Buy a stock for $10, borrow 9 of those dollars, watch the stock rise to 15, sell it, pay back the loan, and pocket the rest. Thousands of Americans quit their jobs to trade full-time. Shoeshine boys were giving out stock tips. There's a famous story, maybe true, maybe legend, that Joseph Kennedy, father of future President John F. Kennedy, sold all his stocks after his shoeshine boy gave him a hot tip on which shares to buy.
We're talking, Jabra.
His logic was simple. If shoeshine boys are trading stocks, the market has run out of new buyers. And when it runs out of buyers, there's only one direction left to go. He was right. By the summer of 1929, warning signs were everywhere, even if almost nobody wanted to see them. Factories were producing more than people could buy. Farmers who had overborrowed during the war years were drowning in debt as crop prices fell. And the stock market had become almost completely disconnected from the real value of the companies it was trading. Some economists warned publicly that prices were dangerously inflated. They were mocked. One prominent Yale economist, Irving Fisher, confidently declared just days before the crash that stocks had reached, in his words, a permanently high plateau. He would go on to lose almost his entire personal fortune within weeks. Then came October 1929. On October 24th, a day now remembered as Black Thursday, the market opened and immediately began to fall. Panic spread across the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Investors who had bought on margin were suddenly getting phone calls demanding more cash, or their stocks would be sold automatically to cover the loan. A group of powerful bankers stepped in that afternoon, pooling millions of dollars to buy stocks and calm the market. For a moment, it worked. The market steadied. Newspapers the next morning called it a correction, not a crisis. They were wrong. On October 29th, Black Tuesday, the bottom fell out completely.
16 million shares changed hands in a single day, a record that would stand for decades. Stock tickers couldn't even keep up with the price drops in real time. Fortunes vanished in hours. Some investors who had been millionaires at breakfast were bankrupt by dinner. There are stories, often exaggerated by later reporting, of ruined investors jumping from office windows on Wall Street. Most of those specific stories were myths, but the despair was very real. Suicide rates in some American cities did rise in the years that followed, not from a single day of panic, but from years of accumulating desperation.
And here's the part most people misunderstand. The crash itself didn't cause the Great Depression. In the early 1930s, there was no insurance protecting people's bank deposits. If your bank failed, your money simply disappeared with it. As the economy weakened, rumors began to spread, sometimes true, sometimes false, that certain banks were running out of money. And in a self-fulfilling nightmare, those rumors caused exactly what everyone feared. Depositors rushed to withdraw their savings all at once. This was called a bank run. A bank doesn't keep all its depositors' money sitting in a vault. It lends most of it out. So when thousands of people demanded their cash on the same day, even healthy banks couldn't pay everyone. They collapsed, not because they were reckless, but because panic itself became the weapon. Between 1930 and 1933, over 9,000 banks failed in the United States. 9,000. Millions of ordinary families, people who had never touched the stock market, who had simply saved their wages responsibly, watched their life savings disappear overnight through no fault of their own. By 1933, unemployment in the United States hit roughly 25%. 1 in 4 working-age Americans had no job at all. In 1933, a new president took office, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And he did something radically different from his predecessor. Instead of waiting for the economy to fix itself, he launched an enormous set of government programs known as the New Deal. Roosevelt's government put people directly to work, building roads, bridges, dams, and parks. He created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, guaranteeing that if your bank failed, the government would protect your savings up to a certain amount. A policy that still exists today, and one of the direct reasons modern bank runs are far less common. He introduced Social Security, a safety net for the elderly that still shapes American life nearly a century later. Here's the part that surprises most people. Despite a decade of New Deal programs, unemployment in the United States was still around 17% by 1939, still a crisis by any normal standard. What finally truly ended the Great Depression wasn't a policy, it was World War II. As war spread across Europe and eventually pulled in the United States, factories that had sat idle for a decade roared back to life, producing tanks, planes, and ships around the clock. 30% of the entire economy became mobilized for the war effort. Unemployment didn't just fall, it essentially disappeared as millions joined the military and millions more filled the factory jobs left behind. It's a deeply uncomfortable truth. The deadliest war in human history is also what pulled the world's largest economy out of its deepest peacetime crisis. So, why does any of this matter almost a century later? Because nearly every piece of the financial system you rely on today exists specifically because of the Great Depression. Deposit insurance, stock market regulation, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Even the modern idea that governments should actively intervene during a financial crisis rather than simply waiting it out, that idea was born in the ashes of the 1930s. When you hear about a market crash today and then hear that regulators or central banks step in within days, not years, that speed exists because of lessons paid for by an entire generation who lost everything. The Great Depression wasn't just history. It's the blueprint
every modern financial crisis response is still built on. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit subscribe to Global Wealth Desk right now. And before you go, smash that like button. It takes 2 seconds, but it makes a massive difference in helping this channel grow. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.